Hello, citizens of the world. If you're returning to the channel, welcome back. And if you're new around here, my name is Courtney Keeley and I am the founder of Open Up. Last week, I started a series on exploitation, and I am going to continue that next week. But yesterday, the Associated Press, CNN, NBC, and other news sources have called the 2020 election for Joseph R. Biden and Kamala D. Harris. I wanted to take some time today to first extend congratulations to the president and vice president-elect, but more so to talk about the impact on immigration policy this call may have according to some historical accounts and the plan for immigration listed on the Biden-Harris website. For this video, I'll mainly be referencing the Biden-Harris website about their ideas for immigration. I'll also be looking at JMU's Center for Civic Engagement blog, which released a piece on November 2nd entitled, "How Will the 2020 Elections Impact Immigration Policy?" by Diego Fernando Salinas Chavez, the Woodson Martin Democracy Fellow. Diego's piece goes thoroughly in depth about the history of immigration policy and programs, discussing the DACA program, family separation, ICE, and other developments over time. One underscoring theme throughout was the use of different policies intended to bar immigrants from particular nations or vast geographic areas. After a significant period of time without any lasting immigration restriction, immigrants from China were pinpointed as, quote, undesirable in the late 1800s. Southern and Eastern Europeans followed in the 1900s, and today, the policies tend to focus on Central Americans and Muslims. Restrictive policies and institutions, often interacting with corrupt activity and employees or enforcers with racist affiliations and personal histories, have resulted at each stage since. That is an extraordinarily brief summary of Diego's historical dive. I highly recommend that you all read the blog post yourself. It is linked in the link tree and in this video's transcript. On his campaign website, which is in the link tree in the description, President-elect Biden states the Biden commitment to a fair and humane immigration system, in which he establishes his goal for a comprehensive immigration solution. In his presidency, Biden says he will end the public charge rule, the metering policy, migrant protection protocols, prolonged detention, and correct the harms of family separation. The public charge rule. This rule, announced in September 2018, allowed officials to deny green cards to immigrants who might need public assistance. Federal Judge Gary Feinerman of the U.S. District Court for the Northern District of Illinois ordered the administration to vacate the policy, saying it exceeded the authority of the executive branch. We'll just have to keep our eyes on this one to see if the current administration appeals and it goes to the Supreme Court. Public charge has been a part of immigration legislation for a long while, but it was targeted to those deemed likely to primarily depend on the federal government for survival, such as through public cash assistance or institutionalized long-term care. The Trump administration aimed to expand this to those who would depend on the federal government for assistance. And this expansion is what Biden is addressing, the metering policy. According to NPR, metering is the term that Customs and Border Protection uses for a process by which it limits the number of people who can request asylum at a port of entry at a U.S.-Mexico border crossing each day. This has resulted in slums on the Mexico side of the border where people wait until their claims are processed. The Trump administration's migrant protection protocols. This is one of those policies where the name sounds good, but the implications of the policy end up having an adverse effect on the communities it claims to assist or protect. This is the policy that is also known as the Remain in Mexico policy. And disability rights advocates have recently sued the Trump administration for this policy. Here's a quote from a press release by the Texas Civil Rights Project this past week. The Remain in Mexico policy is inherently unfit and violent for any asylum seeker, but it is particularly dangerous and unlawful for those living with disabilities, said Aaron Thorne Vela, senior attorney with the Texas Civil Rights Project. Our lawsuit is demanding that the Trump administration comply with its own stated policy. But let's be clear, this policy has created a humanitarian catastrophe for tens of thousands of people who have the legal right to seek asylum but have been effectively barred from that right by the actions of this administration. Regarding prolonged detention, in August 2019, the Trump administration proposed indefinite detainment of undocumented families together. He proposed this to replace the Flores Agreement, which sets a 20-day limit for holding children. This year, Amnesty International and Human Rights Watch filed an amicus brief after saying that federal immigration authorities are violating Flores, quote, by giving families a false choice between separation and inadequate detention conditions, end quote. With family separation, the Trump administration instituted a zero-tolerance policy for people crossing the border illegally in May of 2018. Although family separations have been identified starting long before then within the Trump administration. This policy meant that every adult crossing the border illegally would be taken into custody. As a rule, a child cannot be taken into that same custody, so families are separated. While zero tolerance ended in June 2018, hundreds of children have still not been reunited with their parents, often because the parents were deported to their home country and the children were not released to them beforehand. Communication has been difficult to establish and maintain. Of course, one cannot run based solely on what they are going to stop doing. So here are some of the policies and actions otherwise that Biden hopes to implement. Reinstating and expanding DACA, providing pathways to citizenship, protecting TPS, temporary protected status, and DED, deferred and forced departure recipients, supplying humanitarian resources, implementing a case management program for asylum seekers, and reestablishing Task Force for New Americans. The president-elect wants to make DACA recipients eligible for federal loans and make it so that they are included in his proposal for debt-free community college. Regarding humanitarian resources to the border, there was not further clarification of what these resources would entail or how they would be distributed, but there should be a team working with the countries themselves and the humanitarian organizations based in the country to ensure that people receive what they actually need, and there are systems of check to make sure that it is distributed appropriately according to level of need. And that is just scratching the surface of things to come. With that, don't forget to sign up for the email list, give the Instagram a peek, subscribe to the channel, and give this video a like. Until next week, citizens of the world, goodbye.